It was supposed to be just another ordinary day for 22-year-old Emma, a wildlife enthusiast from a small town. But when she heard about an injured bear in need of help, everything changed. The local animal rescue center had posted an urgent plea online. A young bear had been trapped in the woods, left with a serious injury to its paw. Emma, who had always dreamed of working with animals, couldn't ignore the call for help. But this wasn't your typical rescue. The center, overwhelmed with cases, had asked for a $5 donation to assist with the bear's care. It wasn't much, but it was enough for Emma to feel a connection. Without hesitation, she paid. Little did Emma know that small donation would lead her to an experience that would change her life forever. When Emma arrived at the rescue center, she was met with the bear, big, majestic, and clearly in pain. The fear and exhaustion were evident in its eyes, but as she looked into them, something unexpected happened. Instead of showing fear or aggression, the bear simply gazed back at her, as if it understood her presence was one of hope. But Emma's heart was racing. She knew what could happen next. Wild animals, especially injured ones, could become dangerous in an instant. She braced herself, waiting for the bear's reaction. What happened next was nothing like what she had expected, and it would leave her in tears. Emma had always been an animal lover, but nothing had prepared her for this. The moment she saw the bear, she froze. The animal was massive, its dark fur matted with dirt and blood. The injury on its paw was severe. The bear had been caught in a snare, a cruel trap that had dug deep into its flesh. The wound was raw, and the bear's movements were slow and unsteady. It was clear that it had been struggling for days. The rescue team worked quickly to stabilize the bear, but Emma couldn't take her eyes off it. She knew the bear wasn't just an animal to be saved. It was a symbol of something much deeper: survival, resilience, and the unexpected kindness that nature could offer, even in the harshest circumstances. The rescue team sedated the bear to examine its injuries more closely. Emma stepped forward. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached out her hand, cautiously. The bear's amber eyes flickered open, meeting hers for the briefest moment. Emma's heart skipped a beat. What if it attacked? What if it saw her as a threat? But the bear didn't react aggressively. Instead, it merely stared at her, its gaze soft, almost curious. Emma could feel the tension in the air, but there was also something else, something unexpected. A quiet understanding. It was as if the bear knew she wasn't a threat. The team worked fast, wrapping its injured paw in a soft bandage and placing the bear in a transport cage. Emma, despite the overwhelming fear, could not help but feel drawn to the animal. She couldn't understand why, but there was a connection. "Stay strong, big guy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. But as she spoke, she noticed the bear's gaze lingering on her, as if it was listening, understanding Emma's life was about to change in ways she never expected. Over the next few days, she visited the rescue center every chance she could. The bear, whom they had named Kodiak, was recovering slowly. The staff treated his wounds, but they weren't sure how long it would take for him to fully heal. Despite the pain, Kodiak was still remarkably calm. Each time Emma visited, she brought food and treats, offering them through the bars of the cage. The first few times, Kodiak simply watched her from a distance, not showing any signs of aggression. Emma's heart ached for him, but she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of connection every time their eyes met. It was clear that Kodiak was becoming more comfortable with her presence. The bear would sometimes lean closer to the cage, his big eyes softening as he took the food from her hand. But there was something else happening, something Emma couldn't put into words. Kodiak wasn't just tolerating her presence. It was as if he was beginning to trust her. As the days passed, Emma's visits became more frequent. She would sit by Kodiak's cage for hours, simply talking to him, sharing her thoughts, and telling him about her day. She noticed subtle signs of healing, not just in his body, but in his spirit. Kodiak, who had once been fearful and defensive, was now more relaxed. He no longer recoiled at her touch, but leaned into it, letting her stroke his head gently through the bars. One morning, when Emma arrived, she found the staff members gathered around Kodiak's cage, their faces lit with surprise. "He's been eating on his own," one of the keepers said, a smile spreading across her face. "He's showing real signs of recovery." But there's something else. Emma watched as Kodiak, instead of retreating. To the back of the cage as usual, was sitting at the front, watching her with an intensity that almost felt like recognition. As she stepped closer, she spoke softly. "Hey, buddy, you're looking better." The bear's large head tilted slightly, as if he understood her words. The soft growl that rumbled in his chest was almost like a purr, a sound of contentment. Emma's heart swelled. She didn't know how, but she felt a bond forming, something deeper than she had ever felt with an animal before. It wasn't long before Emma's heartache turned to hope. Kodiak's injuries healed, and his strength began to return. But no one expected the bond they had formed to go this far. One day, as Emma approached the cage, something unexpected happened. The door was slightly ajar. The keepers had been cleaning, and in a rare moment of calm, Kodiak had managed to nudge it open. Emma's pulse quickened. Was this a sign of aggression? Was Kodiak trying to escape, or was he about to lash out? For a moment, she stood frozen, watching him. The bear's large form was silhouetted in the soft light of the afternoon. Kodiak stood at the edge of the cage, his amber eyes locked on hers. The tension in the air was palpable, but then something miraculous happened. Instead of charging at her or running away, Kodiak took a few hesitant steps forward, lowering his massive head toward Emma. She was in shock, but she didn't move. Her hand slowly reached out. Kodiak stopped just inches from her. And then, the most incredible thing happened. He nudged her hand gently with his nose, a soft nuzzle. It was a sign of affection, something so unexpected, so uncharacteristic of a wild animal that it left Emma speechless. Her eyes welled with tears. "Kodiak," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You trust me." The moment felt surreal. Emma couldn't believe it. This bear, who had been trapped and wounded, who could have attacked her at any moment, was now showing her trust. The bond they had formed was unlike anything she had ever experienced. As she stood there, Kodiak rested his massive head on her shoulder, the weight of his head comforting her. It was a moment of pure connection, an animal and a human, both healing in their own way. Kodiak's recovery continued at an astonishing rate. He was strong again, and with his strength came an undeniable truth. It was time for him to return to the wild. The wildlife center had been a temporary haven, but Kodiak belonged to the forest. It was his home, and Emma knew it was time to let him go. But even as she prepared for the release, she couldn't shake the feeling of sadness. The bond they had shared felt unbreakable. The bear that had been wounded, lost, and scared had found solace in her presence. He had trusted her, and she had returned that trust by ensuring he would be healed and freed. On the day of the release, Emma stood at the edge of the forest, Kodiak's cage beside her. The moment had arrived. The team had opened the cage door, and Kodiak stepped out. He paused for a moment, turning back to look at Emma. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, neither moved. And then, as if to say one last goodbye, Kodiak took a step forward into the wild. The sight of him disappearing into the trees was bittersweet. Emma's heart ached, but she knew it was the right thing. Kodiak was free. Months passed, but Emma would never forget Kodiak. The memory of that bear, the way he had trusted her when he had no reason to, stayed with her. She continued her work with wildlife, but now, she carried with her the lesson that no matter how wild or broken an animal might be, there is always the potential for compassion and healing. Kodiak's story spread far and wide, becoming a symbol of the power of empathy and trust between humans and animals. Emma often thought back to that moment, when Kodiak nuzzled her hand and smiled. Sometimes, the most miraculous transformations don't happen overnight. They happen when we least expect them. And for Emma, Kodiak would always be the bear that changed her life forever.